Hey, this is Crystal from 31 Threads. When I first started quilting, I didn't even know what a quilt kit was. Now it is my absolute favorite way to make a quilt. Join me today. In this episode, we'll look at why it's going to be your favorite new thing too. Let's make a quilt. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are making a quilt from a quilt kit. Now let's start by talking about why quilt kits are so fabulous. First of all, the work is done for you. When I first started quilting, I had a hard time matching certain colors together and how much darks to put with lights and how much busy fabric to put with just a plain fabric. It felt a little overwhelming. In a quilt kit, all of that's already been figured out for you. Secondly, there's no waste. You're not purchasing any more fabric than what you need for that particular project. Now there's a little bit extra to account for a few mistakes, but basically you're paying for just what you need. Thirdly, the pattern is already included, so that's another expense that you don't have to worry about. The fourth thing is that you don't have to run down all those pieces of fabric that you need. Most fabric collections will have anywhere from 25 to say 40 pieces of fabric in them. And most quilt stores won't carry all 40 fabrics. So if you're looking for specific ones, you may have to piecemeal it out and get 3 pieces from here and then order this from here and order that from there and pay all the shipping. And when you get a quilt kit, all of the pieces that you want to use are already there and located for you. Last of all, when you saw that picture of that quilt that you wanted so much, you know that if you're using a quilt kit, you're going to get that very exact quilt. The quilt we're making today uses this pattern called Picnic Time. This is a free downloadable from the Fat Quarter Shop, and we're using this fabric from Riley Blake's brand new line called Blush and Butterscotch. I've included this quilt kit at my webpage. It's 31threadsquiltcompany.com if you want to purchase one there. If you don't want to, if you have your own fabrics, you can download this at the Fat Quarter Shop. We have our fabric, we have our pattern. Let's get started. Included in your quilt kit, you will have your background fabric, your binding fabric, the 12 fat quarters you need to make the 12 squares with, and also the pattern. Let's talk just a little bit about this pattern. On the inside first page are the cutting instructions. It will give you the instructions for cutting all of the 12 fat quarters, and then it will give you the directions for cutting the background fabric. The very first thing I cut when I have a quilt kit or any pattern is I cut the borders first. And the reason for that is I don't want my borders to have seams in them. So I want to use the fabric while it's not been cut yet to get these long strips first. So when I start cutting this, I will go to this front page, look at right here where I'm going to cut the border pieces, and it says 4.5 by width of fabric. I will take this background, press it, lay it out, cut those first. Then I'll go ahead and cut the other background pieces. After that, I will cut out all of the fat quarters. I will save my accent and binding for last. And this is the backing, which is not included in a kit. It does give you a visual here of the fat quarter and how to cut each piece so that your fat quarter is enough. You can see how much extra fabric is here in case you make a mistake, but you will want to be sure and use this cutting diagram to cut out the pieces from your fat quarters so that you are sure to have enough fabric. Let's go ahead and get all of this cut, and then we will go ahead and use the rest of the pattern, and I'll walk you through that to make your squares. Okay, all of our fabric is cut, and as I said before, I like to cut the border pieces first so that those won't have seams in them. After I cut the borders, I went ahead and finished cutting out all of my background fabric, which was just these 2 pieces right here, and then the sashing. These long pieces will be the sashing. Just set those aside. We're not going to use those right now, but all of the rest of it will just be 2 sizes. Super simple. And then I cut all of the fat quarters, and those were all just 2 sizes. This long one, 4 sizes. The long one, the medium, the small, and then these corner pieces. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and start assembling the blocks as I've done here. Guys, I can't stress how super easy, super beginner friendly this block really is. You can see it's just straight seams, no tricky tricky things here, just super easy. So you're going to sew these across, sew these, and then this row, and then sew this row, and lastly this row. And then you can sew this row to this row, and then sew this row to this row. Once you're finished, before you're ready to add these corner pieces, you will want to press this very flat. Press from the front, press from the back, press back to the front. Just be sure that it's completely laced flat before you try to put these on, because these blocks, when you add those, are going to sew across this seam. And if that seam is not flat and it's not laying flat, it won't attach well. So this is called a snowball corner, and it's not hard, I promise. You'll want to take this fabric piece and just use some type of ruler and make a pencil mark right down the center. Now, one of the very first quilts I made, I'm going to go ahead and confess that I used an ink pen. And I had done several pieces before I realized, before probably my mother told me, that ink would bleed when I washed the quilt. So I had to go back and take all of those pieces off. So I learned the hard way that you do not want to use ink or marker or anything that could bleed when you wash your quilt. So just use a lead pencil. You can pick up a fabric pencil if you'd rather use that. The fabric pencils are nice if you're using a dark piece of fabric and this won't show up. You can get like a white fabric pencil, and those will just wash right out. But for light fabric, I just grab a lead pencil, mark right down the middle, and then when you attach this, you are going to want to make sure that it does not hang over this part or this part. This needs to be lined up right with your outside edges, just like that. And then you're going to sew down that pencil mark. Once you have done that on all four corners, right sides together, just sew right down there. It'll look just like that and just like that. And it's on your pattern. I just wanted to take a minute and show you how to do that, but there are images that you can look to and refer to on your pattern. Once you sew them like that, then you are going to press that back where the seam is, where you've sewn, and you're going to press that down just like that. Press it good and flat. Once you've done that to all of your blocks, you've assembled them, then you have pressed them, then you've added these and pressed them down. I'll show you what to do next. Okay, now we have attached our snowball corners and we have pressed them back flat, and so we're ready to trim. Before trimming, we have both layers of the snowball corner and then your original layer, and that's just too much bulk. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep this top layer that's a part of your design, and you're going to trim these two bottom layers. You want to be sure and leave 1/4 inch of fabric away from that seam. So I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and trim to about 1/4 inch. It doesn't have to be exact. And that will be flat. Now, you'll want to press that. You can either, you can leave it like that, or if you want, if you're pressing your seams open, all of my seams are pressed to the side, so I'm just going to leave it that way. But I'm going to go ahead and trim all of the corners on all of the blocks, all of these. I'm going to trim them off, and then we'll be ready to assemble these blocks with the sashing. And we're going to start to see the pattern come together at that point. So one of the things I wanted to share is that as I begin to put the blocks together, I realized that the pattern said each block would be unfinished at 15.5 by 15.5. Some of my blocks were just a little bit shorter than that, and they were not square. So when I went back to the pattern and looked, I noticed that the pattern did not build in squaring the blocks, and that's something that I always like to do. They just don't go together well if they've not been squared. And so I went back and squared my blocks to 15 by 15 so that they would all be the same, that they would go together very nicely, that all my seams would line up very nicely. And so that's just something that you can decide either to do or not do, but for me, it was worth losing 2 inches in length and 2 inches in width overall for the whole quilt to be able to square my blocks and have them go together and match up just a little better. So that's a call you can make. I just realized that wasn't in the pattern and wanted to share with you just what my process was. And so my finished blocks, instead of being 15 by 15, will be actually 14 and a half by 14 and a half because of the squaring process. Okay, I'm now ready to attach the borders, and I've already have the two side borders. This is going to be the top, but I wanted to just pause for a minute and show you a couple of things. I have the borders pinned. I have them cut exactly to size, and I have them pinned. When I first started quilting, I didn't think that it mattered if the border was too long. I would just start sewing at the top, whatever's left off the end, cut it off. I didn't pin it. And what would happen is I would wind up with a lot of excess fabric on the ends. This side would be okay, but then on the end that stuck out, the fabric would almost be fluted. And when it was time to long arm it, it didn't lay flat. And even after it was long armed, the edges didn't lay really flat for me. So I learned that it's best to cut the borders exactly the size that you need and then pin them to keep them in place. What will happen is if you don't pin them and you're feeding it through your sewing machine, the top or bottom will feed through a little bit faster or slower than the other, and you'll wind up with some excess, and it's not really even. So it's best just to cut those borders the way the pattern tells you to, cut them exactly to size, pin them, keep them in place, and you won't end up with fluted edges when you're finished. One last thing I wanted to show you as I'm sitting here binding this quilt, it came to mind that I thought you might be interested in seeing what it looks like to use two different color threads for your binding. The front of this quilt, of course, is cream with this dusty rose binding. So I've used a dusty rose for my top thread because if you'll look very closely, it blends in so well. But on the back of this quilt, because it is brown, I really didn't want the dusty rose on the brown. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do binding. Some people are skilled enough that they catch the front and they catch the back. For me, if I pull this binding all the way over, as far as it will go, then I catch the front with my thread, and then the back, if you look very closely, the stitching is right there beside of the binding. It's actually on the quilt, if you look really closely, not on the binding itself. So I have started using two colors of thread. It just works really well for me. So I've got the dusty rose on the front. Again, you can see it right there. It blends in really well. And then on the back, I'm using a brown thread, which would be in my bobbin. My bobbin thread is brown because it goes right along beside and you don't even notice it. It just blends right in. So just thought you might want to see that as a possible option for your binding. I just finished the picnic time quilt and I'm absolutely in love. I love this fabric. I love how simple the pattern is to put together. And I love the fact that you can lay out the quilt in an ombre fashion the way I did, and it looks great. My sister-in-law just finished a quilt and she did the blocks randomly and it's just as gorgeous. So I wanted to show you the finished product. Here we go. I don't know how the lighting is here, but as you see at the top, I did the light pink in the first row, the medium pink, or it looks a little darker here with this lighting, and then the butterscotch colors and the chocolate. I love this. I love this border. Brown on the back. I chose this brown on the back, but any of the colors would look great. I still have a few of these kits available in my online store. If you would like to have one. Also, this pattern would go great with absolutely any fabric, so can't recommend it enough. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoy making this quilt. Join me again for another episode of Let's Make a Quilt.